Hey guys, it's Summer and today I'm going to be giving you some audiobook recommendations. This is going to be like the first video of a few videos of me recommending audiobooks to you guys. So we'll just call this Audiobooks Part 1. And I figure in each video I'll recommend 5 audiobooks or something like that. Because I read a lot of audiobooks or listen to a lot of audiobooks, so I have a few to recommend. A few of these you've probably seen in other videos or me talking about them as audiobooks in other videos. This will be just me talking about them again, but a few of them I hope are kind of newer ones to you guys. So I'll start with a really popular one first, or at least a popular book, and that is the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. The first 2 books and most of the 3rd book I completely read physically, but from half of the 3rd book on, I've mostly listened to them on audiobook. I really love the chick who narrates for these books, because I feel like now that I've heard her voice for so many of them, she is Selena Sardouthian. Pretty much everybody has heard of this series by now. In case you haven't, it's just about a female assassin who's badass, and now it has gone crazy places, but that's initially what it starts as. And I just really like the chick who narrates, because she sounds, in my head at least, exactly like Selena would. So I really like that. Plus, these are some fucking big books. This one, it was how many? 600 and something? Yeah, 680 almost. So for really big books like this, audiobooks are a really nice way to go. Yeah, so Throne of Glass series for sure. The next one I've for sure talked about on my channel before, and it's The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. I absolutely love this book, and I was saving it specifically for audiobook because a ton of people had told me to do it that way, because Neil Gaiman actually narrates it himself. So you're getting it exactly the way that he wanted you to. You're hearing the voices exactly how you wanted them to be portrayed to you. Just everything that he did with the audiobook was just awesome. Neil Gaiman's voice is also just really nice to listen to, and that sounds kind of creepy. I've tried to figure out a way to say that 3 times now without sounding totally creepy. But I mean that I like his voice, that I would like him to narrate more for other audiobooks, because I just think he does a good job at it. This is a really short story, so you go through it really fast. It's only a couple hours. It's about a man who goes back to his childhood home, and while he's there he kind of starts to remember all these things from his childhood that he had forgotten, I guess. And it's magical realism. The writing is so beautiful. I just really love this book. I actually made a whole kind of video on why you should read this, so I'll link that in case you want to watch that. And I just feel like that video, I explained this book so much better than I probably just did. So if you're interested in this, I would maybe go check that one out so my thoughts are a little bit more coherent, but I definitely recommend this audiobook for sure. Next is another one that I just barely talked about, and it's The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. My physical copy will be here probably in the next couple weeks, so I don't have it for this video. But this audiobook is narrated by Claire Danes. I just feel like the main character, they need to have somebody whose voice sounds like it would come from that character. You can visualize the person, visualize that voice coming out of the person. And I felt like Claire Danes' voice just fit well for that. The writing in this book was also just beautiful. It's a dystopian that follows a woman who is a handmaid, and in this kind of government situation, whatever is happening, dystopian, a lot of women can't have kids anymore, so the women that can are turned into handmaids that are basically just kind of assigned to families to give them kids. And it's really creepy, and women's rights are gone, and it was just a really kind of horrible book to read, but at the same time it was really interesting, and the writing was really beautiful. But I just really loved the audiobook for this one. The next one is going to be The Raven Cycle by Maggie Stiefvater. I half read these and half listened to the audiobook last summer. Don't have these be the first audiobook that you ever listen to. Kind of dip your toe in with some other ones first. I feel start with something like Throne of Glass. That's a good one to ease yourself into audiobooks. These ones, the narrator, he's this older guy, and his voice took me a long time to kind of get used to and eventually because for the first little bit of the books I was like, what is happening right now? Because his voice for some of the female characters are fucking ridiculous, let me tell you. Especially in Blue Lily Lily Blue, I think is where most of it starts. The voice he does for one of the characters literally drove me insane. But don't let that sway you from listening to the audiobooks though, because now looking back, there was so much atmosphere through his voice for the audiobooks that I can't imagine experiencing the books any other way. The way that he delivered so many of the lines, and he kind of almost did a hushed kind of whisper voice for some parts, where I felt was just very fitting for this book, because it's very kind of dreamlike and whimsical, and I just felt when he did that, sometimes it just made you feel more immersed in the world. Like, I wouldn't have initially guessed that he would have been a good fit for these audiobooks or for the books, but like, totally looking back now, I really, really liked his voice for the audiobooks. But definitely start with an easier audiobook first and work your way to this one. The last I'm going to recommend is just kind of like all of the books by this author, because literally I have not physically read a single book by this author yet. They've all been audiobooks so far. So the author I'm going to recommend is Colleen Hoover, but specifically It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover is the book that I recommend for you to read, because I feel like out of all of her published works, this is the one that, if you've been kind of keeping up with Colleen Hoover related bookish news, this one is probably the least problematic in my opinion. Looking back on her other stuff, I have kind of realized the things that have happened in her books that are super problematic. Especially November 9, Whitney from Witty Novels did a whole Goodreads review on it, where it really kind of made me step back and think a little bit about when you're reading a book, sometimes you're just so kind of in the story that you just kind of let some things slide because you feel like it fits for the story, but I don't know. I still really enjoy myself when I read Colleen Hoover books. I just go into them more cautiously now. I feel like this one though, her writing has matured a lot through it. I feel like some of the situations and problems that were handled in this were handled realistically and in a respectful way. I feel like, even though I haven't gone through any of the problems that are going on in these books, I feel like this is probably the best book I've read by her. It's my favorite one that I've read so far. It does have heavy trigger warnings for everything, so go into it with knowing that. But I always love who they pick to narrate her audiobooks, because they have younger sounding voices, young adult, which her books are new adult, so I feel like you can't have somebody that sounds too old or too young narrating them. And I just feel like, kind of with The Handmaid's Tale, the voice fits what I imagine the person to look like. I could picture that person talking and sounding like the audiobook. This is about a woman named Lily who owns a floral shop, and it just kind of follows her story through her teenage self, through her journal that she writes and reads throughout the story. And she writes her journals to Ellen. She watches Ellen DeGeneres all the time, and so she writes her journal entries starting out, "Dear Ellen," and I love it because Ellen's amazing. And then you also are hearing the story her present day, dealing with relationships and friendships and lots of other stuff that's really hard to deal with. And it's a really sad book, but also a really good book. And Colleen personally has gone through the problems that are kind of addressed in this, so I feel like we're getting a really true representation, at least her experience with it. So I know that some people may be opposed to Colleen Hoover books now that people have kind of been analyzing them a little bit more critically, but I definitely recommend this one. I really, really enjoyed it. I'm pretty sure that's all of them that I wanted to include in this video. I already have my next 5 in my head ready to go for whenever I film that one, so be watching for that next audiobook recommendation video. But I hope that this is somewhat useful to you guys if you are looking for audiobooks to get you started into audiobooks, or if you're a seasoned audiobook listener like myself. Hopefully these are some new ones for you guys to listen to. If you have any audiobook recommendations for me, I'm always down for the recommendations, so leave them down below. I'd also love to know what you guys all think of audiobooks, because I know it's kind of it's a very hit and miss thing for a lot of people, so I'm very interested to know what everybody thinks about them. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.